Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because folks, life's too short to be miserable. Happy whatever day it is when you're listening, Inspiring Possible People. I'm so excited that you are back listening to another episode. Thank you for joining us and just lending us your ear, your heart, your mind, your thoughts, your intentions as we are going to dive into another, hopefully, inspiring episode for you today. So I was just talking with this guest before I pressed the button that I feel that a lot of times that the universe aligns to have guests that are in areas that I am kind of thinking about, wanting to grow or expand in. And luckily for you, maybe this is an area for you, maybe it's not, but you hopefully will learn a little bit along the way and maybe get a different thought or perspective or inspiration to help guide you along this wonderful thing called life. So I have a guest from Canada with us today. But she also is like online, which that means that she could be from anywhere, right? Like that's like you're speaking one to whoever is in the parameter. But she is the creator of this thing called Buff Nation. And it is an online fitness community helping women over 40 reclaim their energy, confidence, and waistline. Okay, so if you're a dude listening, you can still listen and gain value today. But listen, ladies, I'm almost at the 40 mark. Okay. And I have learned that my body is starting to do things that it used to not do or hold on to things that it don't want to let go of. And so if that is you, we're going to talk about other things besides that, but this is the podcast episode for you. And so Leslie has had almost 2 decades of experience in health and wellness industry. And guess what? She's helped hundreds of women. So I'm excited to welcome Leslie Gordon Christie to the show. Welcome.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. This is fun. Excited.
Yeah. Okay. So I just need to know, when did this become your passion point, or how did you get here to being able to help all these women over 40 kind of reclaim life?
Yeah. So it's actually interesting because back in the day, when I say back in the day, it was a long time ago. In my last year of high school, I started to teach fitness. Okay. I thought I was
Really?
yeah.
Okay. So this was an early on passion. This was not like something that just, developed over time.
No, but it's had twists and turns. So I started to teach fitness and at that time, like everyone else young, you want to get in shape. You want to fit into the clothes for the vacation. And so that's what I was doing to put myself through journalism school. Got out of journalism school, got a job as a journalist. I was a broadcaster, I was an anchor, and I was reporting on really difficult stories. And I was doing it for over a decade. And I realized that I could no longer do that. I felt like something wasn't right. I was stressed out. I hired a coach because I thought maybe I just needed to go to the next level of my career. Maybe it was CNN, maybe it was ABC. And through hiring a coach, I realized that I was actually out of alignment with my values. That's a really big thing. And when we're out of alignment, the universe has a way of telling us through stress, through overwhelm.
It does.
Right? Yeah. So I decided, through that, I would go back to what I loved, what I had been doing for the longest time, and it was fitness. But I wanted to bring a component that I didn't think anyone at the time was talking about. Keep in mind, this was 2 decades ago. The mindset component, the thoughts that we think, creating our reality. Nutrition is important. We might be focused on the kinds of foods we put in our body, but we also need to be mindful of the kinds of thoughts we're putting in our head. And so that led to the creation of Buff Nation, which, by the way, stands for Beautiful, Unique, Fearless Female. And so now, we have a mindset component. We have a movement component. We've got a coaching circle component. So it's really turned into really just a transformation, not from the outside in, but really from the inside out, because that's where change begins.
Well, and look, we can use me as a guinea pig for this discussion here, but, because I will say that I do think you can have knowledge, right? And I would say, I don't know if you've had this perspective, but I think most people walking around maybe know a little bit about what they could do,
Yes.
to feel better, to, maybe be healthier, whatever that might be. Like,
Yes.
I think if we ask somebody off the street, like, what could you do to feel better and feel healthier or be healthier? They probably would tell us a few things. What do you think they would tell us, Leslie? I'm sure, like,
Yeah. So everybody knows. That's the thing. We have
yeah,
knowledge, but knowing and doing are two different things. And we call that in coaching the knowing doing gap. So we all have information, we all know what we should do. But if we're not doing it, there's usually a subconscious reason why. And so what I do is I help women uncover that because things are hidden for the whole reason we say subconscious. We don't even realize it. It could be a simple belief like, I am not worthy of living in a smaller body, or I need to protect myself by covering myself with weight because I don't want people to look at me. Everything goes back to our emotions. And so that's the cool thing that I get to do is help people get in touch with that. And then when we shift that, everything else will just follow.
yeah, and I think it's like you said, there's a large gap between knowing and doing, and uncovering what is that thing that's holding us back. So, what are maybe some things that you help people do to kind of maybe peel back the layers to uncover that thing that may be keeping them stuck from making the changes?
Yeah, so I just developed this quiz. It's actually really new. So I'm talking about it and I'm looking at my notes because I just did it. But I have found over the years, there's usually four archetypes or kind of personality types, and the reasons they're holding on to weight. Okay. So the first one is the protector. They feel like they have to protect themselves. And so they hold on to weight. The second one is the pleaser. It's all about pleasing everyone else, showing up for everyone else, but not showing up for themselves. And then there's the pusher, the person who's out there, crushing it and a lot of masculine energy, always feeling like what they're doing is not enough. And then, of course, there's the punisher, where we feel like it could be related to a trauma, it could be related to not feeling adequate. And then we punish ourselves by holding on to weight. And so I have found by just putting together this little quiz, I can figure out what type of archetype, and then I can dive down to the limiting beliefs and then help them release them. So, of course, they can move forward and actually show up for themselves, make themselves a priority, show up because they're worth it.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can go into that. What do you find are the core, maybe in these four areas, if you were to name like one or two limiting beliefs for each of them? Because I'm curious as people are listening, that quick description, they might have found one of those areas that they would put themselves in without even taking the quiz, right? Like, oh yeah, I definitely feel like maybe there's some protective factors of why I do this, or maybe there's, I'm just showing up for everybody else but not myself, and I'm not, worthy, or maybe my time is not as valuable. So for me to put the intention behind this, what would you say are some of those limiting beliefs that you see show up the most?
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because I think everyone can relate to, how they feel like the protector is really about like, I want to stay safe. Maybe they have chronic tension in their jaw or in their shoulders. Maybe it's postural tightness. Sometimes even like slouching forward, right? Like just, bracing themselves. And oftentimes it's like an armor and it's feeling safe. And if you're listening to this and there's something happening in your body, that is an emotional response. And it's something to really think about. And I'll give you the website where you can get the quiz too.
Oh,
But
awesome. Yeah, we'll look it
yeah.
up.
And also though, if you're a pleaser, this is a really big one because if you're a pleaser, you're doing everything for everyone else, right? You're putting everyone first. So even if you join a fitness program and you have all the intentions in the world to show up, if someone else runs into a problem where your kids have things happen, you're going to put your life on hold and you're going to go and you're going to follow through with that. And that's the pleaser. And so oftentimes it just means that you put yourself last, right? And then there's the pusher, which is about the person who just wants to overdrive and is afraid to slow down. We need rest, but oftentimes the pusher feels like rest is silly or rest signals weakness. And I just have to keep going, even when your body is tired and even when your body needs a rest. And then the punisher. This is someone who may feel that the girls' weekend that they had, they need to punish themselves for not following their diet plan. And as a result, when we try to punish ourselves, what happens? We fall off, we judge ourselves, we get into this cycle, we do things that don't serve us, like stop showing up for ourselves with workouts. stop prepping meals, stop saying kind things to ourselves. And so I think it really makes it easy to understand what kind of holds each person back when you can connect yourself to one of those categories.
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm just as you're listening, I'm like, oh, there's this one area or one of them that I'd probably identify most with. And it is, it's hard sometimes when you know thyself. I guess that's the first thing, right? Is what I'm hearing you say is know thyself. And it's not that any one of those areas are necessarily bad in their own right. It's just understanding how you operate and maybe what are some things that need to shift, maybe like you said, in your mindset
Yeah.
to help you be able to follow through on those intentions that you set for in your life. And I would say most people listening, I would like to believe that most people are like, I've never met anybody that says I want to be unhealthier. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Have you met anybody that has said
Right.
that to you and all the women that you've
No.
worked with over the years?
No, and I find that this is why this work is so powerful because a lot of times they have these limiting beliefs, but you don't realize it. You don't realize if you're holding yourself back because you have that deep seated belief that you're not worth the time or someone else is worth it. And so in coaching, we talk about how your beliefs create your results. Okay. This is really big. It's almost like your foundation. So there's this great story that I tell ladies, and I call it the pot roast story. Okay. So I'm going to explain kind of like what's behind this through this story. And the story goes there was this girl who just got married and she was preparing a pot roast for her and her husband. And she took the pot roast and she cut the ends off and she put it in up like in the pot and then she put it into the oven. And her husband said, why are you cutting the ends off? And she said, I have no idea. My mom always did that. So she calls her mom and she said, hey, mom, like, why am I doing this? And she said, I have no idea. Like, my mom did it. So she asks her grandmother, and her grandma says, that's just what my mother did. So she called her great grandmother, who was still alive, and said, what's up with this? And her great grandmother said, when I first got married, we had a small oven, I had a small pan, and I needed to cut the ends off so I could get the pot roast in the oven. And so, what this is an analogy for all of those stories we have told ourselves over the years through experiences, through, maybe some trauma, through some overwhelm, even some things that we keep telling ourselves over and over again. That then becomes our program. And so, when I'm talking about these four categories, it's kind of like a general four categories that you could fall into. But under this, there are some limiting beliefs running the show. In coaching, we call this your paradigm. So, your paradigm is a collection of thoughts, of habits, of emotions, and it's responsible for, get a load of this, 96 to 98% of everything that we do. So, that said, everyone, as you're going forward in life, you may not even realize you're doing some of these things. Okay, that's why you got to take the quiz because you're kind of like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that when I'm pleasing everybody else or I'm tying my worth to helping people, I'm sacrificing my well being. And we all know the story of if you're in an airplane and the oxygen mask drops, what do?
We're supposed to put it on
You got it. You got it. And so
first
that's,
before
yeah,
putting it on anybody else. Yeah.
you got
I
it,
know it
right?
is so hard. I've talked with people before, and it is crazy because I don't think we always realize that how much these paradigms are running us. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like you said, it's from our childhood experiences. Sometimes it's from the societies we live in, the people around us, what they're sharing, the things that we are being modeled, or like you said, my grandmother always did this way, so maybe I should do it too. And I think some of those subconscious messages, or sometimes very conscious messages, we don't aren't always to put the link together to find the link of why is it that I end up neglecting myself, or why is it that I have great intentions to start these new things or these new habits that would help support my health. But then I get a week into it, 2 weeks into it, a month into it, and then I'm self sabotaging myself from all the work that I have been able to. But I also do think, I'm curious what you think about this. I do think that sometimes people also kind of go to extremes. And so I wonder how you help people that tend to kind of go into one extreme or the other and how to adjust, create, I guess, like, I don't know if it's like realistic or maybe healthy intentions or I don't know how you'd phrase it, but do you know what I'm saying? I'm sure you've had people that they're going to this
Yes.
extreme or like, I'm ready to go and let's just go from 0 to 1,000. We should do that tomorrow,
Yes. Yep.
you know?
So that's in my category of women, that's the pusher. right? The pusher
Okay.
holds weight through over efforting and masculine overdrive. And a lot of times I find what's behind that is that perfectionist mindset. It's all or nothing. I have to
Or
do it
nothing, yeah.
perfectly or not. And that's actually a form of self sabotage. That is just a program. Probably you can always tell a program. And when I say program, I mean paradigm, the pot roast stories. You can see a pattern in all areas of your life, right? So it's probably, and I was that way. Like I can say that. I was like 125,000%
Oh,
in.
you're the pusher?
Yes. And I needed to, and so I can talk about that is what I didn't realize is more effort doesn't always get you to the finish line. So in coaching we talk about masculine and feminine energies, and I don't just mean men and women. I mean masculine being the action and feminine being the visualization and the mindset. And so what I like to do in this situation is slow the person down. I like to say, let's slow down to speed up. Let's get the feminine energy in there by thinking about what you really want. And let's get really clear on your vision. And when you get clear on your vision, you're going to receive what's called inspired action. And then inspiration. And then you take what's called inspired action. So you're not just hustling and pushing, and because that's not going to get you forward because you've got a default image in your mind creating the same old, the same old. You got to pause, get really clear on what you want, and then take the action inspired from that vision. And I found myself that helps. So does meditation. So does breathing, slowing down.
Yeah, well, and I am curious because I mean, like as you were sharing your story earlier, you were a journalist, a broadcaster. It sounds like I just know from some of the behind the scenes stuff I get from your bio, like you were working on some pretty large platforms, right? And I'm sure you had a really probably what most would consider, I'm going to assume, and you tell me if this is not true, successful broadcasting career. And so how did this, because it sounds like you maybe did this for yourself
Oh my gosh.
and
Yes, I was
and
my best
breaking
client.
through from that pusher. Because I would say of all the 4 areas, I'd probably find myself in the more of the pusher, maybe not the most perfectionist all the time, but the more of the pusher of the masculine energy, let's keep on taking action and the settling down. So I'm curious how you were able to help yourself navigate through this because it sounds like that's something that you had to do first so that you could really help other people.
Yeah, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't have these 4 categories back then, but what I
Yeah.
did know
Wouldn't have
is
been
that
nice
would have
to
been
have it quiz
nice.
like this.
Yeah. And I actually it's funny, we tend to attract the clients who we were or where we are, right? And so I work with a lot of women just like I used to
A lot of
be, and
pushers.
yeah, there are lots of
They
pushers.
just don't slow down enough to
No,
actually get the inspiration so
no,
they can take the inspire action. I'm
yeah,
tracking this conversation.
yeah, it's so true. And so I think just being unhappy and drained, I was able to, the other thing that I've learned through a great mentor was the quality of your results have to do with the quality of questions that you ask, meaning you ask a question to a higher power, you're going to get the answer, but you have to be quiet enough to receive that response. And so back in the day, yeah, I was doing lots. I was probably working 12, 13-hour days, 6 days a week. And I thought that we hold a badge of honor, in this society, that doing that is a great thing. But I was depleting myself and I really wasn't getting anywhere. And so it actually took a lot of internal work, a lot of internal shifting, of just dismantling an old belief and an old record that was playing until I realized when you align with the laws of the universe, and that's something else we talk about in coaching, is that's when life flows and it's not about doing more, it's about being more. If that
Yeah.
makes sense. And it takes, but we have to slow down first. We have to pause. We have to get quiet. Sometimes we're not ready yet, but we will be ready if we intend it.
Yeah. Well, and look, I'm reading a book right now and I cannot remember the name of it, but it's oh, the lady that wrote The Artist Way, but it's maybe Creative Wisdom or something like
Yes.
that. Julia,
Okay.
is it Julia? I can't remember her name. I'll look it up in a second so I don't lie about her. But she talks a lot about that, about slowing down enough in kind of the questions you ask, especially to the higher power, however you would classify that in your life. In mine, I'd use the term God, but to really be able to sit down to be still enough to actually also receive. And it's interesting because I do think one of the things you said is that so many times in our society, we put a badge of honor on an external identity. So if it's like hey, I'm this or I'm that, or I do this or I do that, or I do this really well. And it's hard for us to really, I think, sometimes, especially for those people in the pusher world or the high achievers, however you want to call them, to really find that pause to slow down and realize that it's sometimes not always doing more. Like you said, I love being more. And that's kind of hard place to sometimes get people to. So is there any things that you really help these individuals that are attracted to you? Maybe like you said, our former self
Yeah.
to
So
be able to kind of to learn how to be a little bit better.
yes, one of my clients, and actually more of them, but one it just happened just the other day. We had a massive like shift, and we had figured out that she was tying her self worth to her job. Okay, which we all do, right? We have to,
Yep.
but as soon as we release that, and I use what's called emotional freedom technique to do some of the releasing. It's basically a form of emotional acupuncture. And so they're done at meridian points. There's science behind it. It is absolutely phenomenal. And what I do is once we identify some of the limitations, and in her case, it was, I'm not worthy unless I'm killing myself in my job. And we release that freedom. And now she's able to enjoy hobbies. And now she's able to look outside of work. And work gets better because you don't have all that negativity and overwhelm and stress. And the stress just pushes away what you want. Because if you're asking God or universe for something and you're shifting your mindset, you're going to get there. But what pushes it away is negativity, overwhelm, complaining, stress. And so once we neutralize some of those limiting beliefs that were running her program, incredible shift. I mean, and I can just think of so many of that exact example right now of the worthiness to your job.
Yeah, I think it's a big one, especially for what I would classify as high achieving women, if we want to put a label on it.
Yes.
Women that are very driven and want to accomplish. And honestly, probably a good bit of our listeners. I would like to believe that a lot of our listeners here, they're wanting to create possibilities for their life. Somebody might be listening to me like, Christy, I don't know what bucket you just put me in because I'm okay with, being and live life. And so if that is you, I need you to give yourself a pat on the back. You have learned how to live and live fully. But the truth is, I think a lot of people do struggle with this again. And it could be overachieving in areas like, as you were talking about earlier, like doing for others. Like, I think that sometimes I live in the deep South of the United States, and the truth is, we were raised with this set of programming about that, you kind of don't complain. If there's somebody to help, you help them. If there's somebody to serve, you do that, which I think is all amazing. I think it has great undercurrents in there of service to others. But I think sometimes what gets lost is at what cost to yourself.
Right.
And I think sometimes that deprogramming, releasing, allowing yourself to reconceptualize that in a way of like, no, if the better I take care of myself or pay attention to what's going on inside or what I'm feeling called to or what this stress or things are trying to give me clues on, I take care of that, the better I can actually be in service to others if that's something that's driving and motivates you. So it is hard though, because we all live these, like you said, paradigms that we're sometimes largely unaware of.
Right. And it is true. But I think that when you start to invest in your growth, and this is where I know I have a fitness business, but this is where I say that work is actually the mindset piece. So what I mean by that is reading the right kind of books. With myself, I studied with Bob Proctor. I teach his programs. He's phenomenal in the personal development world. He's no longer with us, but it's finding someone and studying every day as to how the mind works, how the laws of the universe work, so you can have an understanding so you can start to understand the power that flows to and through you.
What would you say is the first step for somebody that is really wanting to seek that understanding?
Yeah, there's this great book. I have this funny story, and I won't take a long time, but basically, um, I got into the news and I had a lot of stress in my life. And I was reading Anthony Robbins at the time, Tony Robbins. And anyone who studies Tony Robbins, he's big into self hypnosis and at the time NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, which is a way to, help move yourself forward. All these techniques can be helpful. And I came across self hypnosis and I looked up self hypnosis in the local phone book. That's how long ago it was. And I found
Oh,
this
wow.
woman,
Okay. Okay.
right?
I remember them yellow pages. I don't know what it was in Canada, but it was called the yellow pages
These
down
yellow
here.
pages. And
Okay.
I showed up at this woman's office and she sat me down and she was like, "Okay, your life is crazy because your head is crazy. You have so much stuff going on in your head right now that you have chaos in your life. And that was my first experience with understanding that as within, so without. So if we're looking around us and we're seeing chaos, we have to go inside and start cleaning up what's inside. And so that's one of the first things I do when I start get working with women is let's get our mind organized and let's do that. And that in itself makes the biggest difference. And one of the easiest things you can do is practicing gratitude every day because that gets your mind on high vibe feelings and vibrations, and automatically you're focused on something good in your life than something not so good, and what you focus on grows. So that's one of the easiest things you can do to start getting your mind in order.
Yeah, and it is that it's just hard sometimes to pause and do that, but it can make a big difference. And I love how you said, "As within, so without." Is that what you kind of said? External,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
hmm But I
And I
don't
would
think we always think. I think a lot of times people walk through life and they think the external forces is what is controlling or influencing the internal. But really, I guess what you're saying is it's the internal that's really affecting how you respond to the external.
Yes. And, I wouldn't go so far as to say like we attract absolutely everything in our life. And we've all seen tragic situations and things that happen and we're not sure why. But I would say the one thing that we can control is our response to things. And in controlling our response creates that next stage of our life. And I always like to tell the ladies in our coaching circles that today, we're here because of the thoughts yesterday, last week, last year. Tomorrow is going to be here because of the thoughts that we're thinking today. And so, if we're looking in the mirror and we're constantly telling ourselves how much we dislike our bodies and that we're not grateful for anything or we just hate this, then that's what we create. And so the other thing that I didn't mention that I think is worth mentioning is sometimes there's forgiveness work, especially when it comes to body and body image, is just forgiving ourselves, releasing frustration, releasing anger. And some of the techniques that I've talked about, I use to do that. But that in itself can actually unload some of that overwhelm we feel. Sometimes we're staying busy to avoid feeling those things too, right?
100%. Okay, look, and I can even it's interesting when you really start to do this internal work, as I'm sure you've experienced, Leslie, and I'm not saying that I've arrived by any stretch of the imagination, but the more I am aware, the more I do start to see patterns of behavior that I'm like, "Oh, that's avoidance."
Yeah.
That busyness, or honestly, if you are somebody that stays busy and that is one of your coping strategies to avoid things in life, what you find is when you really start to try to be still, and stillness is not a practice that you do because, again, you're busy to avoid. You might not say that and you might not think that, but you might be trying to avoid things. It could be relationships, it could be stress in certain areas, it could be your own internal dialogue.
Yes.
That starting to get still is really where the hard work. The busyness is not hard. It's the stillness that then becomes hard, you
So
know?
true. That's what I see, right? And so that's where I think the internal limit the work and the four categories can help because if you're okay to identify yourself in one of those four categories, then you kind of know from there, or I would know from there what to release or what pattern to release. And by just sometimes releasing a couple of core beliefs and reprogramming them, you will have a shift and you will be able to slow down. But there's something keeping you on overdrive. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's not good. It just is. But it's good to
Mhm.
know what that is. So then we can, move you forward in a way that's going to feel good.
Well, and since you've worked with so many women throughout the years, when people do take the time to do this work where they are able to understand what's holding them back, when they're able to understand the paradigms that they're operating in their life, when they're able to understand these limiting beliefs that they might not always be conscious of, but then they become conscious of that have kept them stuck in patterns of behaviors that have maybe not yielded the best outcomes that they would like for their life or their body or however their health. How do you see this change for them when they start to do these work and unlock some of this stuff and be able to, whether it be forgiveness work, whether it be releasing work, whether it be, redetermining what beliefs they want to hold as they move forward? How have you seen this impact with the women that you serve specifically?
I can see it. I mean, we have two programs within our community. One of them is just fitness only. And one of them is mindset and fitness. And the ones who do the mindset always show up to the fitness because they have shifted the beliefs of procrastination, of not being worthy, of not worth the investment. And I really see the difference. And that's why I do more of this now, because honestly, if it were the external, we would all have reached our goals,
We'd all
right?
be, feeling, looking
Yeah.
exactly how you'd wanna look,
Yeah.
whatever that means,
Yeah.
yeah.
So true. But, and the other
Acceptance
thing,
of self, you know what
right?
I mean?
And the other thing that I really like to do is I like to empower people and give them the tools and teach them, just like that woman did to me all those years ago when I ended up in her office. She showed me tools that I can use for the rest of my life so I can keep growing. And so that's what I strive to do, is not just, hey, you have to come just to see me and you need to see me. No, I want to empower you so you can keep moving forward and you can keep releasing, because we are constant works in progress, right? Constant.
Yes. I
Right.
always say I feel like I could live this life 1,000 times over and still for sure be a work in progress. Like, I don't think there's a time where any of us arrive, and I'm doing my little air quotes right there for those listening. It's all a journey, and I think when you uncover one thing, it's just like a thread. There's like you're starting to pull things, but the more you pull, the more you understand, and then the more you understand and you have that awareness, then you can take that inspired action that I think can really yield to results. And so I think it's fascinating that you actually had the 2 different communities, and over time, you've really been able to see the
Yes.
ones that are just not ready to do the mindset work and they are
And
solely
that's
focused
okay.
on, and
Everybody
that's okay.
has
There's
a
yeah, there's
yeah.
no judgment. But it's fascinating to me that, like you said, what you've learned from observing the interaction, the engagement, the progress, the results that people get in the 2 communities, how much that mindset really does determine or I guess at least supports people in reaching the outcomes or, results that they really wanna be able to achieve.
Yeah, it really is. When I see that, it's just that's what makes me wanna do more of the belief work, because the results you get when you invest on the inside, it just changes everything on the outside. All areas. You start with health, then it goes to finances, and then it goes to career, and then it goes to relationships, because 'cause they're all connected. But if you shift one program in one area, you start to see the shift in other areas.
Well, and it sounds like your journey has, had some similarities to mine, but I'll tell y'all folks, that when I started investing in my own personal to growth and development, whether it be reading the books, whether it be, one of the things that I love about this podcast is I get to meet people like Leslie, who we really can engage in this dynamic conversation, and I'm learning, the more you can really peel back some of the layers of who you are as a person and knowing thyself and understanding thyself. I really have seen, like, the results, or I would say the results or what has happened in my life has been way beyond what I could have imagined, but it all started from the internal work, 100%. And it all started, honestly, for me listening to a podcast. I think when I really started to see my life shift, I was listening to a podcast, and it was helping me shift my mindset about whether what beliefs I had about myself, and then I started reading books and doing some limiting belief work, and where was I limiting myself that I was even unaware? And it's crazy because you get so far, but there's still those blocks that'll happen that you have to uncover. I'm sure for yourself that you probably have to work through even
Oh,
today. Yeah.
every day I use all the tools that I teach people, because there's something new. Every new opportunity for growth, there's a new limiting belief that comes up, or there's, a new way of releasing it and bringing in a new one.
Well, and I love how you said tools because I think that I don't know about you, but I was given some tools growing up, but nobody was teaching me EFT techniques in grade school or emotional awareness or mindset work. Did you get that in school?
I got the opposite, which I guess that's why I'm so into that, because I needed to find a way. I needed to keep going.
Yeah. I need somebody to help, please.
Yeah,
And so then when you
exactly.
learned, which I think it's crazy. So it sounds like that yellow book, that call that you made all those years ago was one of probably the best decisions you could have made for your future self.
Oh my God, totally, like, life changing. But at the time, like so many other things, we think the world is happening to us. We forget that it's happening for us. Okay, let me say that again. We think the world is happening to us, but it's happening for us, for our growth, for our success. The universe, God is on our side and wants us to grow, but we have to also make some shifts along the way to help that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Right before I got on the call with you, probably about 30 minutes an hour ago, okay? We had an air conditioner guy come in and help in service one of the air conditionings because in Louisiana it's really hot right now. Okay, Leslie. Okay, so we need some AC because if not, we all like melt into little puddles. So I don't know how people did it back in the day. Whatever. I'm grateful, so grateful for air conditioning. Okay. But he came and he was having to get in this vicarious spot and he didn't realize it, but he stepped on the ceiling, and he accidentally fell through a little bit. Not the whole way. This just happened, okay? He just fell through a little bit, okay? Luckily, nobody was hurt. Let me disclaim to all our listeners, nobody was hurt in this process. However, he was able to get his leg out of the hole, eventually fix the problem. But one of the girls was looking at me because all of a sudden I just start, sweeping up the stuff that had fell through the hole, right? The pieces of, drywall and the insulation that had fell through and, just automatically. And it's interesting because my response was not even like panic. It's just like, this is another problem to move through. But I would attest that if you would have happened 3 years ago, I would have been like, oh my God, there's a hole in the ceiling. We got to do something about this. But, you realize that again, this is just part of life. It's happening for me. This hole is just, another opportunity to maybe open some dialogue. We don't know. I don't know what the whole purpose of the universe is, but at the end of the day, you can move through life, I feel like, so much easier. It's not like this resistance of like I'm waking up and I'm not saying I don't have bad days, but I don't know if you feel this. I feel like I'm more on a path where I'm flowing versus like hitting a resistant that I'm playing tug of war in life. Maybe it's
Beautiful.
the best analogy. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Yeah. And then that's all the work that you have done that shows the
Yeah.
transformation that's happening. Sometimes we don't see it on the outside yet, but when we respond differently to a situation, it means we've shifted that internal program.
Yeah. Well, and I use that as a story not to like, say, hey guys, this is where I've arrived to because I still got a lot of arriving to go. But I want to say that it's possible, which is the whole reason of this podcast, that when you start to dive into this work, I don't know, but even for you, Leslie, if you've had this experience, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not like tomorrow I'm going to wake up and just be released from this whole paradigm that I've built for, that's been happening, over however many years. This doesn't happen. But when you start to intentionally do that work to show up for yourself, it sounds like you've seen where that's shifted for you and then also for the people that you've served.
Yeah. I always show at the beginning of every coaching session a picture of a cocoon. And I say, okay, look at this cocoon. It looks like nothing is happening, right? And everyone's like, yes. But then inside, all the intricacies of nature are at work. And then the next slide is always the butterfly. And it says, even when we think nothing is changing, things are changing. But if we are to open the cocoon before it's time, the caterpillar dies. So you don't want to open your cocoon early. You want to keep going so you can become the butterfly.
I love that. Well, that may be a good segment in our time together to maybe tell people if they're like, okay, I'm ready to be a butterfly, and Leslie, I've been hearing what you've been talking about. I maybe need to do this mindset work, but I also have some fitness goals that I want to achieve. How can they find out more about you or connect with you?
Yeah, so I would say go do the quiz. It's going to be on wearebuffnation.com. Just go to the main page of the website. The quiz should pop up. Then you're going to kind of have an understanding of which of those four archetypes you are, and then obviously what you can do to move yourself forward.
Okay. Well, guys, we will make sure and link that up for y'all so that you can go take full advantage of that. Because I will say, I do think that finding ways to be healthier mentally and physically is something that I think a lot of women and just people in general would say, yes, I would like that to happen. And I think it's just sometimes we don't realize that we're getting in our own way. And it could be from our previous experiences. And how can we be able to release some of that so we can move forward to that version of ourselves that we want for tomorrow? Well, okay, one final question, Leslie, like that I like to ask all my guests that come on is, if there was one piece of advice from all that you've learned, maybe from that lady that you called up and went to her office and she gave you all those tools, or it could be something that maybe you have gained from even people that you've worked with, and you were to go back to maybe younger you, whatever stage you want to pick, and give yourself a piece of advice or a word of wisdom, what's one thing that maybe you would tell younger Leslie?
Keep going. It's all going to work out. We always think of worst case scenarios, but things always do work out. It's just the attitude we have in the moment. And that is such magic is when we can shift our attitude and see the good. And I know sometimes we have to dig deep, but if we can see the good, even if it's 10 years later, that's going to help us move forward and understand the lessons that are being presented to us.
Yeah. Guys, that might be the wrap to our show. Find the good, see the good, explore the good, because there is good there. Leslie, I just want to acknowledge you for, in your own journey doing this internal work, because I do think it really is what flows from flows to the external. And so you did the internal work, and then now you support women all throughout the country, probably globe, to help them find ways to become more energized, confident, and feel better in their own skin. And I just want to acknowledge you for doing that work for everybody that you serve, but also for yourself and for showing up today and sharing these great insights with us.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. So if you were listening, y'all know I try to leave y'all with one thing that I'm taking away from today's conversation. And I'm actually taking a lot of different things. I mean, I got a lot of notes of what I'm kind of taking away with me. But I would say one of the things that she said is as within, so without. And so wherever you are along your journey today, just take a moment to pause, explore what's maybe happening internally, find some time to really set some intentions, get some clarity of vision. And if you feel like you're getting stuck or you need somebody to help you walk through that, don't be afraid to seek help. Because guess what, guys? There is good and your life matters. And there's some possibilities waiting for you. Until next time.
That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.